Hey there. My name is Joe Rogers, and I'm an Accessibility Product Manager here at Workday. I'm so excited to be talking with you today in another session of our Workday Accessibility Level Up series. If you're new to this series, each month we cover a new topic in digital accessibility. From general information, understanding guidelines, how to develop and test, to strategy and content creation, we have something for everyone. And don't worry if you've missed a session either. Each one is recorded and available to watch for free on our YouTube channel. In previous sessions, we've talked about what digital accessibility is, why it's vital for people with disabilities, how it benefits everyone, and how critical it is to your organization's success. Today, we'll be taking a bit of a deeper dive into assistive technology. First, we'll talk about what exactly assistive technology is. Then, we'll give you some examples of different assistive technologies that might be used by one or more different disability types and discuss how they work. And lastly, we'll talk about what's important to keep in mind for these technologies and the people they're used by when building a web application. So let's hop right in. First, we need to establish what assistive technology is. Essentially, assistive technology is a piece of equipment, whether it be software or hardware, high-tech or low-tech, that helps a person with a disability do something. That something could be anything from reading, to writing, to pointing, to talking, to walking. Today, though, we'll be focusing on different kinds of assistive tech that help people with disabilities interact with digital content. It's important to note that we won't be covering all of the different types of assistive technology that exist. There are too many to cover in the time that we have today. And keep in mind that as we cover some of our examples, that many people that use multiple assistive technologies at once may use them in different ways that are unique to their needs and experiences. With that in mind, let's get started. We'll start with vision disabilities. This includes blindness, low or limited vision, and difficulty seeing color or color blindness. For people who are blind or low vision, one of the most common assistive technologies that's used is a screen reader. A screen reader is a piece of software technology that reads the content of a web application aloud. They can be used in tandem with a refreshable Braille device, a piece of hardware technology that displays whatever is being read by the screen reader in Braille. A screen reader works by reading the content behind the page, the code behind a web application. For a digital application like Workday, this means that it's reading the HTML that creates the content of the page. Ideally, all the content and context that is provided to a user visually is also provided to someone using a screen reader. Again, either audially or tactically through a refreshable Braille display. This includes content like images, buttons, form fields, hyperlinks, and plain text. It also sometimes includes their context, the relationships that these components have between each other. In future sessions of our Level Up series, we'll be covering different ways to make sure that the way that you create your web application allows for this information to be conveyed to someone using a screen reader. Overwhelmingly, the most popular screen readers for blind desktop and laptop users are NVDA and JAWS. It's important to note, though, that these screen readers are both designed for Microsoft Windows devices. If you're on an Apple device, whether it's a Mac or an iPhone, you'll be using Apple's built-in screen reader, VoiceOver. While these screen readers have some minor differences between them, like the subtle differences in the way that you can navigate between different components on a page or different keyboard commands that you'll use, for the most part they function the same. With that, let's take a quick look at some of the basic commands that you'll use with a screen reader. Today, we'll be using NVDA on a Chrome browser as our example. First, to read through the content of the page line by line or element by element, I can use the down arrow key.
Heading Level 2 Quick Tasks. List with 3 items. Button Request Time Off. Button My Payslips. Button Time Off Balance.
If I want to read backwards, I can use the up arrow key.
Button My Payslips. Button Request Time Off.
If I only want to read through the elements that receive keyboard focus, I can use the tab key.
Home. Workday Document. Button Skip to Main Content. Skip to Main Content button. Accessibility Overview button. Menu button. Collapsed Global Navigation. Home button.
Again, if I want to go backwards, I can use the Shift tab key.
Menu button. Collapsed Global Navigation. Clickable Accessibility Overview button. Skip to Main Content button.
If you ever feel overwhelmed by the screen reader or you just need it to stop talking, just press the Control key.
Home. Workday Document. Heading Level 2.
But if you want to pause it instead of stopping it outright, just press Shift.
Home, Workday document.
Pressing the Shift key again will cause the screen reader to pick off reading where it left off.
Button skip to main content.
When designing a web application, some of the important things to keep in mind, especially for people who use a screen reader, are first, alternative text for images that are not decorative. If your image gives meaning to the content or provides context to the page, then try to describe it succinctly with your alternative text. Second, all of your inputs should be appropriately labeled. Remember that screen readers use the code behind the page to determine what to announce to the user. If your form field isn't associated with its label in the code, but is only associated by its visual proximity, then a screen reader won't be able to make that association and communicate it to the user. Lastly, and similarly, the reading order of the page should be logical and should match the visual flow. We'll talk more about how to test with a screen reader and what you should be looking for in a future Level Up session. Before we move on, now is a good time to remember from our previous sessions that assistive technology is not just used by people with disabilities, and that disability is a spectrum. Some people may experience a disability or multiple disabilities on a permanent, temporary, or even situational basis. Think about the amount of times that you've maybe forgotten or misplaced your glasses. You've had to work off of a tiny screen, or maybe you've been in a bright place and it's difficult to see. Being able to magnify your screen to see something that's more clearly or at a text size that's more comfortable for you is really useful for situations like these, and is especially important for people who have low or limited vision. That's where screen magnification comes in. And luckily, modern browsers come built in with this assistive technology. From any browser setting, it's pretty easy to increase or decrease the browser's zoom to your preferred setting. On Chrome, you can easily increase or decrease zoom by using Control and plus keys, or Control and minus keys respectively, and Control and 0 to reset. Now, as we increase or decrease the zoom in our browser window, you may notice something. The content on the page rearranges itself so that nothing gets cut off or hidden off the page. This is what we call reflow. The browser recalculates the position and dimensions of components on the page in order to ensure that all the content fits without having to scroll in two dimensions, vertically and horizontally. When building a web application, make sure that your page is able to properly handle this, up to about 400% zoom. But browser zoom only really functions for the content within the browser itself. What if you need to zoom into something that's not in your internet browser? Both macOS and Windows come pre-installed with a screen magnification tool. On Mac, you can find their magnifier zoom in the accessibility settings, where you can also turn on keyboard shortcuts or trackpad gestures to activate it. On Windows, you can press the Windows and plus keys to turn on Microsoft Magnifier. These magnification softwares function almost exactly like a digital magnifying glass. Zooming in allows you to view anything on the screen at the increased size of your preference, not just the content in the browser window. To move around the page with the magnifier on, simply point the mouse in whatever direction you'd like to go. The last visual disability group we'll talk about is difficulty seeing color or total color blindness. Color blindness can range from minor difficulties seeing differences in certain colors to the total absence of color perception. 1 in 8 men and 1 in 200 women have some degree of color blindness. Some people with difficulty seeing color may use a device's high contrast mode to help them differentiate between components in a web application. High contrast mode allows a person to pick between preset color modes or custom color combinations. On Windows, you'll find these settings in the contrast themes in your system's accessibility settings. On Mac, these can be found in Display under the accessibility settings. When building a web application, one of the most important reminders is to not rely on color alone to convey important information. It's also important to make sure that your text and components meet the minimum contrast requirements established by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Generally, that means a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 for text and 3 to 1 for interactive components. We'll talk more about color contrast in a future Level Up session. So now let's move on to hearing-related disabilities. This includes both partial loss of hearing and complete loss of hearing, otherwise known as deafness. For people who are deaf or hard of hearing, the most common assistive technology that's used are captions and text alternatives. When building a web application that uses audio information, whether that's an audio cue or a video, it's important to provide some sort of textual alternative. For videos, this is often solved with captions. Closed captions have to be activated by the user to be seen. Open captions are embedded in the video file and are always visible. Remember that captions are not used just by the deaf community or people with hearing disabilities. They're used by everyone. Think about times when you've maybe wanted to watch a video without the audio on, or the video is in a language that you don't speak. When generating captions or text alternatives, it's important to consider that they are synchronized and accurate to the audio information being provided. This includes all meaningful audio, whether that's dialogue, music, applause, laughter, or other audio information important to understanding. Now let's talk about assistive technologies that might be used by people with motor disabilities. There are many different types of motor disabilities, from neuromuscular diseases to paralysis to body differences. People with a motor disability can have difficulty with sensation, movement, and/or coordination. Because the type of motor disability and degree can be so varied, the tools that people use are just as varied. One of the most common tools used by people with a motor disability is actually just a keyboard. Rather than using a mouse to navigate through a web application and point at and interact with components, someone with a motor disability may use a keyboard instead. Similarly to how someone who also uses a screen reader will use one to navigate through and interact with content on the web. Now, keyboards can range from ones as simple as the one included with your laptop, to ones that are ergonomically designed, to ones that are specifically designed for a person's needs. Even more varied and customizable are the near endless combinations and types of switches that are available. These can take a variety of shapes, from single switches, which often look like a large button, like this one, to joysticks, like this one created by Microsoft Adaptive. They can even range to devices like a sip and puff switch, which uses mouth movements to operate. Each of these devices can be further customized by their users to have a variety of commands that are programmed to run depending on the way that they're interacted with. Again, this joystick from Microsoft Adaptive can be programmed to run a different command depending on which direction the user moves the joystick. There are even different commands that can be programmed depending on whether that press is long or short. Again, all of these devices are highly customizable to meet the particular needs of the person that's using them. The last tool that we'll discuss for motor disabilities is voice recognition software. As the name suggests, this allows a user to use voice commands to interact with a page, similarly to how someone may use a mouse or a keyboard. My colleague Andrew will walk us through a quick example of what it's like to use Dragon software.
Scroll down. Scroll up. Click Edit. Holiday. Move down 2. Press Enter.
Notice that he can give verbal commands to interact with components, enter text, and view different sections of the page. Some of the things to keep in mind, especially for people with a motor disability, are ones that we've already discussed. First, make sure that all of your inputs are appropriately labeled. Remember when we discussed this from screen readers? This is also especially important for voice recognition software. Second, your reading order should be logical and match the visual flow of the page. Next, everything that can be interacted with by a mouse should also be able to be reached and interacted with by a keyboard. And lastly, and this one is new with the most recent standards from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, your touch target sizes for any inputs should be a minimum of 24 by 24 CSS pixels. There are some exceptions to this, but this one is especially important for people developing mobile applications. Now let's move on to the last disability group we'll discuss today. Just like motor disabilities, neurodivergence and cognitive disabilities are inclusive of a wide variety of conditions and challenges. While they are loosely defined, they're typically characterized by difficulty remembering, learning new things, concentrating, and performing common tasks. That said, we're continuing to learn more and more about neurodivergence and cognitive disabilities, as it's one of the fastest growing groups today. Assistive technology for neurodivergent people or people with cognitive disabilities is also fast growing and incredibly variable. Some of the tools that exist today are ones that we've already discussed. Things like screen magnifiers, contrast modes, and screen readers. There are other tools that help neurodiverse people or people with a cognitive disability, though, that are also used by everyone. Things like a device's focus mode, which turns off notifications, word prediction software, or even a device's login autocomplete. When considering people with cognitive disabilities, allow for multiple ways of viewing content. Users with cognitive disabilities may prefer custom settings like increased text spacing, no images or animations, or specific styles to view content. And don't require your users to rely on a memory to complete a task. Allow for autocomplete when possible, especially for logging into an account. Any information that can be moved from one step to the next should be moved. With that, we've reached the end of our talk. We've covered a lot of information today about assistive technology. Remember that the examples we've discussed today aren't a comprehensive list of all of the different kinds of assistive tech that might be used by people with disabilities. And keep in mind that many of these technologies might be used together or in ways that we didn't discuss. Lastly, and most importantly, remember that developing with accessibility in mind for people with disabilities and the assistive technologies that they use pushes us to uncover better ways of interacting with the web for all users. In future Level Up sessions, we'll dive deeper into understanding accessibility guidelines. Then we'll have a series of sessions focused on accessibility skills for developers, a series of sessions for testing on accessibility, accessibility strategy, and mobile accessibility. Many of the assistive technologies we've discussed today will be discussed in more detail in many of these other sessions, so stay tuned. With that, let's go ahead and open up for questions.